Hey, everybody. You are about to hear a brief retelling of the movie The Town. Enjoy the movie. The Boston area of Charlestown is well known for having a high annual rate of bank robberies. Particularly skilled at it are Doug, Jim, Glonsey, and Dez, for longtime buddies. The mastermind behind their schemes, Doug provides the other three with all the information they must commit to memory prior to their next procedure. They seize the opportunity to shove the guard who is carrying a money bag into the bank and go in with him, taking charge of the situation right away. After the robbers empty the cashier station and force everyone inside to the ground, they steal their smartphones and force manager Claire Kesey to access the vault. Unaware that Claire is pushing a quiet alarm button with her foot until it is too late, the robbers begin pouring bleach all over the premises to take care of any potential DNA proof after stealing all the money and destroying the hard drives of the surveillance cameras and a microwave. When they do, it's too late. Jim beats up the assistant manager, thinking it was him, and Claire witnesses his violent movements and his neck tattoo. Jim chooses to take Claire as a prisoner, something they never do, realizing that the cops are going to surround them. When they get far enough away from the bank, they dump her off at the beach, no longer needing her, and they blindfold her before removing their masks. Special Agent Adam Frawley leads the FBI's takeover of the crime scene. Since the robbers appear to have taken care of every last detail and left no trace, he can only assume that they are experts. The vehicle his guys used for the heist is also discovered, but it has been set on fire, and no one in the area is ready to testify as a witness against it. The thieves had threatened to murder Claire if she provided the FBI with any information, so the following day, when Frawley questions her, she tells him what little she knows and leaves out the tattoo detail. The four robbers gather to talk about Jim's terrible plan to kidnap someone, but when he shows up there, he has even worse news. He has Claire's ID and has observed that she lives close by, so she will definitely see him around. He decides that he should follow her about to make sure she is terrified enough to stay silent, but Doug steps in and threatens to do it because he can't afford another jail sentence for Jim. In reality, he will do it because he doesn't trust Jim's recent history of violence. After that, Doug and Jim drive around the area paying their vehicle and gun dealers, as well as Fergie, an Irish gangster with a flower shop in front of him, the requisite amounts. After that, they gamble, drink, and use drugs with call girls all evening long. The four of them are drinking drinks at a pub the next night when Chris, Jim's sister, and a single mother approaches them. Doug doesn't want to talk to her and walks away, despite the fact that she claims to miss him from their past relationship. However, Chris enters with her old copy of The Keys and makes love to Doug on the couch a few hours later when he's watching TV at his house. The following day, Doug goes into the laundry room after Claire and begins to follow her around. He seizes the opportunity to touch her and pretends to console her as she breaks down in tears over faded bloodstains on her clothing. He takes her out for a drink in an attempt to cheer her up. Although Doug tells her he works in construction and that his dad lives in the suburbs rather than in jail, they still get along and talk. Then he shows her around on a boat, saying it's his friends, but in reality he's breaking in for this purpose alone. He just responds that tales are made up when she inquires about the number of bank robbers that reside in Charlestown. When Doug and Jim meet the next day, he assures Jim that Claire is under control and doesn't require her death. Frawley receives a tip after questioning and beating up one of his criminal contacts. These thieves were skilled in working the box rather than just doing trucks like other thieves. They begin browsing through employee profiles and work records because this type of information can only be learned when working for a company like Vericom. Claire claims that she is already sort of seeing someone when Frawley joins her for lunch in an attempt to probe more. Doug begins dating Claire, however he maintains this a secret from his friends. They reveal more personal information about one another as they become closer. When Claire discloses that she is collaborating with the FBI, Doug poses as merely inquisitive and asks whether they have any potential suspects. She also talks about the tattoo she noticed, but she's not sure if she should tell Frawley about it in case it ends up killing her. Doug says she should hold onto it for the time being as it's a card she can play later, even if it means she won't be protected as a witness. In exchange, Doug says that his dad never took any action when his mother abandoned him when he was 6 years old. Claire mentions on one of their dates that she has to drive a longer route to work because some gang members will hurl bottles at her car if she takes the standard route. Doug then picks Jim up from her house after dumping her off, and the two of them go scare the attackers. Doug tells them to go before the week is over, but Jim gets too worked up about it and shoots the man in the leg before removing his mask and revealing his face. Doug merely beats them up and plants some pills. Doug is not pleased with Jim's recent acts of violence. Frawley discovers that Dez worked for Vericom and that his sick days coincide with a number of bank robberies. This enables them to track him into a backyard cookout and learn the identities of the entire group, even if they are still in need of concrete proof to apprehend them. Frawley gives his agents orders to monitor each of them for the time being. Claire tells Doug, at lunch on a beautiful day, that the weather makes her think of the day her brother passed away. She pauses at the table to use the toilet, and when she returns, Jim appears out of nowhere and joins Doug at the table. Doug attempts in vain to get him to go, fearing he would discover his secret. When Claire returns, Doug makes sure to say goodbye to him as an excuse to conceal the tattoo with his hand, but even though Jim is obviously astonished to see her, he still plays along and they converse for a while until she leaves. Later, Jim confronts Doug about her because he believes it would be a bad idea to have a sexual relationship with someone who may put them in jail. Although he hasn't told the others, he wants Doug to take action and replace them on their next assignment. Doug believes they should look for someone else since he doesn't think they are prepared for their next heist due of the individuals they will be working with. But when Jim persists, Doug caves, as long as he promises this will be his last job. He then visits his father in prison to inquire as to why he never searched for his mother and to let him know he could be leaving for a time. In response, his father says there's no use trying to force someone who obviously doesn't want to be a mother into being one. It's time for their next procedure on Friday. They wash themselves properly, obtain some hair from a hair salon to use as fake proof, and use bleach to clean all of their equipment to remove fingerprints. Then, as soon as the armored truck parked, they grab the automobile and pursue it. At first, everything goes according to plan, until one of the guards tries to fight back by pointing a revolver at them. They kill the guard and return to the car, driving as quickly as they can to avoid being discovered because the police are after them as well. They lead to several collisions along the route, and when the police eventually capture them, they shoot the officers as well. Then, they drive away and take the original route. This time, Glonzi attempts some daring driving maneuvers that enable him to cause the police cars to collide. Eventually, they lose them when they discover their fourth team member waiting for them in a different vehicle. As a result, they switch cars and set the prior car on fire, obstructing the police's path. The robbers cross the bridge before the police arrive, so even though Frawley, who was keeping an eye on the case from his office, gives the order to close it. A random police who is parked nearby notices them as they switch cars once more, but he ignores them. Frawley wants to at least speak with them, so he sends his men to bring the four of them in for questioning even though they do not yet have any reliable evidence to use. Doug, aware that they have nothing on him, tells Frawley they have always known they have been followed by the FBI because everyone is aware of the lines the thieves said to the victims. Frawley then forces them to read the lines the thieves said to the victims. The next thing Frawley does is try to gather some more answers from Claire, but he finds out she's quit when he phones the bank. Now that he's growing suspicious of her, he orders his guys to tap her phone and finds out that she's been communicating with Doug all along. When Doug meets with her to give her a diamond necklace, he finds out that she quits as well. He seizes the opportunity to ask her to move away with him, and she accepts. Following their date, Claire receives a visit from Frawley, who first points out the necklace before revealing Doug's profile to her and breaking the news to her. In the meanwhile, Doug meets with Jim, who has been offered a new position by Fergie. Doug advises Jim to go find someone else since he is done. This enrages Jim, who accuses him of abandoning Chris and her baby, but Doug reminds him nobody knows who the father is, and while Hayes thankful Jim's family took him in as a kid, it was never going to be the three of them happily playing house. Even after Jim reveals that he killed someone in order to protect Doug and served 9 years in jail for it, Doug remains unmoved and declines the position. He then proceeds to tell Fergie about this as well, but since Doug is the true smart guy here, Fergie doesn't want anybody else. Fergie gave his mother pills because Doug's father also stopped being involved in his life a long time ago. Doug has been lied to for a long time, she never left, and she overdosed to death. Fergie threatens to treat Claire the same way he treated his mother if he rejects the job offer. When Doug shows up at Claire's house to see if she's okay, she throws him out without offering an explanation or an apology. He attempts to watch her apartment after that and witnesses one of Fergie's goons putting a death wreath on her door. When Doug finally realizes he would have to take this job, he smashes it. Doug tries to contact Claire again after telling her that he would be going after this job and that he has stolen numerous banks but has never killed anybody. Doug then begs her to wait for him before leaving. The group gathers to hear Fergie's plan. They will heist Fenway Park the morning after the big game, when their safes will be stocked. Fergie has inside knowledge of the operation. Frawley approaches Chris in a pub as they discuss the specifics because he believes she could be the weakest member of the family. After acting flirtatious, he gives her his badge and makes it seem as though he is aware that she is Fergie's mule. He steps in and plants the discordant seed when she requests a lawyer, pointing out that despite their long relationship, Doug never gave her diamond jewelry. Chris provides him with a fictitious lead, so on the day of the procedure, Frawley and his men pursue the incorrect vehicle while Chris goes to see Doug, pleading with him to take her along as she too desires a fresh start. However, Doug dismisses her, informing her he is going with someone else. Later, when she crashed her car while intoxicated, Frawley visits her in the hospital and offers information in return for her and her child's safety. She caves in and tells her about Fenway Park since she feels like she's always getting accustomed to it. While Dez uses his electrician knowledge to disable the alarms and security cameras, Doug and Jim dress up as cops and are allowed inside the stadium by a contact of Fergie's. They encounter several workers and security personnel, but their police maneuver backfires, and before long they are drawing their weapons and forcing the guys to drop to the ground so they can bind them. They then approach the cash room and order the staff to open the door and refrain from calling for help as they have guys outside of their houses who will shoot their wives if they attempt to intervene. They may enter, of course, and after stuffing as much cash into their bags as they can, they go out via the parking lot, where Glonsey and Dez are waiting for them in an ambulance. Even though the FBI is already encircling the area, Jim starts fire on them as soon as he notices that they are attempting to enter covertly. Glonsey is shot during a gunfight between thieves and agents, but at least they manage to get him on the vest. Dez slips back and unlocks the door so they can push the truck with the agents out of there while the other three keep shooting. Doug reminds Dez that he doesn't have a police record, so unlike the others, he can walk out and just receive 7 years in prison without anybody holding him responsible. Doug then shuts the door once again. But Dez takes offense to this and decides to remain after calling Doug a liar. The robbers' senses are then tricked by the FBI's stun grenades through the windows, and they send special operatives inside to kill Dez as soon as he stands up. Glonsey chooses a highly dangerous course of action. Because the FBI won't be searching for police officers, he will drive away and draw attention to himself while Doug and Jim don their policeman outfits and exit by the front entrance. Doug is concerned about Glonsey's safety in case he ventures outside, but Glonsey assures him that he is an excellent driver and is aware of how to flee. The ambulance starts and moves smoothly down the block, but Glonsey is killed by a sniper shot to the head when the FBI is unable to stop it with only gunfire directed at its wheels. Doug and Jim are able to change into their police uniforms and make a quick getaway by mixing with other cops while the FBI examines the ambulance, believing that all of the robbers would be present. The deception is short-lived, though, as Frawley is soon searching the area for policemen acting strangely when the FBI learns from the tethered employees that they were ambushed by police. He spots Jim instantly, following him into a parking lot as he walks hurriedly away while toting a large suitcase over his shoulder. Doug is watching from across the street as Jim opens fire on him and is soon surrounded by the FBI and police when Frawley addresses him by name. After Jim gets shot in the leg by Frawley, he runs for cover behind a mailbox only to find that he is out of ammunition. He walks out with his pistols in hand, committing suicide and forcing the agents to kill him on the spot since he refuses to return to jail. While everyone is occupied looking at Jim's body, Doug makes sure his sacrifice is not in vain and makes off by robbing a police vehicle. Wearing a bulletproof vest, he murders both Fergie and his thug while driving to the flower store without suffering any injuries in return. After retrieving some money he had stashed away, Doug phones Claire, who is at the apartment with the FBI listening in on their discussion. Claiming to be alone, Claire urges him to come over, but Doug can tell she is lying since he is keeping an eye on the apartment from a nearby building. Nevertheless, he agrees to leave and asks her to meet him in an hour at the back door. Claire offers sunny days as a subliminal hint to let him know it's all a trap, and Doug complies after he apologizes to her once again. Doug puts money in Claire's garden and insults Frawley in a message left on his car as the FBI waits with Claire for someone who won't come. Then, dressed in an MBTA outfit, he departs the city via train. Although Claire's statement about sunny days raises suspicions in Frawley's mind, it is too obscure for him to use as proof, and Claire is not facing any charges. A few days later, she discovers the money Doug left her along with a message indicating they could cross paths again in the future. In remembrance of his mother, she chooses to give it to the renovation of the neighborhood ice hockey rink where Doug used to play.